This is the story of a quiet, underestimated teenager who walks into a courtroom, only to be mocked by the judge and laughed at by the crowd. No one believes he has anything important to say, until he does, because in his hands he holds the truth, proof that an innocent man is about to be wrongfully convicted. But exposing the truth isn't that simple. What starts as a courtroom argument quickly turns into something much bigger: a conspiracy, a cover-up, and a fight against powerful people who will do anything to silence him. How does a single teenager outsmart the entire system and save a man from prison? Stay tuned to find out. Where are you watching from? Write it down in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel, because this story is just getting started. The courtroom was packed. Every seat was taken, every eye locked on the quiet teenager standing before the judge. The boy, Noah Carter, stood with his hands in his pockets, his messy brown hair falling over his face. He barely looked up, barely moved. If anyone in that room expected him to put up a fight, they were about to be very disappointed. Judge Morton leaned forward, resting his elbows on the bench as he stared down at the teenager like he was some kind of joke. He let out a dry chuckle. "Well, well, well," the judge said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "What do we have here? A young man too afraid to speak?" A few quiet chuckles rippled through the courtroom. Noah didn't react. He just stood there, completely still. Judge Morton smirked. "Or maybe you just don't understand what's going on." The laughter grew louder. Some people in the audience shook their heads, others grinned as they watched the judge toy with the boy in front of him. Noah didn't flinch. The judge leaned back, shaking his head in fake disappointment. "Let me guess. You're one of those kids who thinks he's smarter than everyone else? A genius, right?" He scoffed. "Kids like you end up nowhere. You're wasting my time, wasting this court's time." He pointed his gavel at Noah. "Do you even have a brain in that head of yours? Or is it just empty space?" The crowd erupted. The courtroom filled with laughter, loud, sharp, cutting. People nudged each other, whispering, grinning. Noah slowly lifted his head. For the first time since stepping into the courtroom, he looked up, right into the judge's eyes. His expression was unreadable, his face calm. And then he spoke. "Actually, Your Honor," Noah said, his voice steady, almost casual. "If you're done mocking me, I'd like to correct the mistake in your ruling before you send an innocent man to prison." The laughter stopped. Dead silence. Judge Morton's smirk vanished. His grip on the gavel tightened. The attorneys at the prosecution table turned their heads so fast, it was a wonder their necks didn't snap. Noah didn't blink. The judge cleared his throat, shifting slightly in his seat. "Excuse me?" Noah nodded. "You heard me. There's a mistake in your ruling, and if you don't fix it, someone's going to pay for a crime they didn't commit." The courtroom was frozen, and that's when everyone realized Noah Carter wasn't just some quiet kid. He was something else entirely. Noah Carter had always been the kid no one noticed, the one who sat in the back of the classroom, eyes buried in a notebook, solving problems that weren't even part of the lesson. While other kids were busy texting, joking, or passing notes, Noah was deep in thought, lost in numbers, codes, and theories no one else cared about. It wasn't that he didn't want friends. It's just that every time he spoke, people either got bored or confused. So over time, he just stopped talking. At school, he was invisible, but at home, he was the only thing holding his world together. His mom, Lisa Carter, worked 2 jobs, barely making enough to keep the lights on. His father? He had walked out years ago, leaving nothing behind but unpaid bills and broken promises. Noah never talked about him, never even thought about him, if he could help it. His mother was the one who mattered. She worked herself to exhaustion so they wouldn't lose their tiny apartment, so Noah could have a shot at something better, and he wanted to help. But what could a 16-year-old do? One night, while his mom was at her second shift, Noah sat at the small kitchen table with his laptop open, scrolling through public court records. It was something he did for fun, reading legal cases, looking for inconsistencies, just to see if he could spot something others had missed. It was like solving a giant puzzle. That's when he found it. A case that made his stomach twist. Daniel Grayson, charged with armed robbery, convicted in record time. The evidence against him? A blurry security video, a rushed police report, and a single, unreliable witness. The prosecution had built their entire case around a timestamp from the surveillance footage, claiming Grayson had entered the bank at exactly 9:42 a.m. But something didn't add up. Noah stared at the footage, analyzing every detail. The shadows, the way the light hit the sidewalk, the placement of objects in the frame. And then he saw it. An inconsistency so small, so easy to miss, that no one had questioned it. The angle of the shadows was wrong. At 9:42 a.m., the sun should have been coming from the east. But in the video, it was positioned as if it were almost noon. The timestamp had been altered. The footage was fake. His pulse quickened as he pulled up more records, cross-referencing timestamps with weather data, satellite images, and street cameras from that day. The deeper he went, the worse it got. The evidence had been tampered with, and nobody had noticed. Except him. Daniel Grayson was innocent. Noah's hands trembled as he scrolled through the case documents. This wasn't just a mistake. This was a setup. Someone had doctored the evidence, and if nobody stopped it, an innocent man would spend the rest of his life behind bars. He had to tell someone. For the next 3 days, Noah sent emails, made phone calls, and knocked on doors. He reached out to lawyers, journalists, even the public defender who had originally handled the case. No one listened. They all brushed him off. "You're just a kid. The case is closed. You don't know what you're talking about." But he did know. He had proof, and if no one else was going to do something about it, then he would. Noah Carter had spent his whole life being ignored, but this time, they were going to hear him, whether they liked it or not. Judge Morton leaned forward, gripping his gavel as he stared down at Noah. The room was dead silent, the judge's earlier amusement now replaced with something else, something colder. "You're saying I made a mistake?" he repeated, his voice slow and dangerous. Noah stood firm. "Yes, Your Honor." His voice was calm, steady. "And if you don't check the evidence, you're about to send an innocent man to prison." A few people in the audience exchanged uneasy glances. The tension in the air was thick. Judge Morton exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "This is ridiculous." He turned to the prosecutor. "Is there any reason we should be taking legal advice from a high school student?" The prosecutor smirked. "Not unless you think internet conspiracy theories hold up in court, Your Honor." A few quiet chuckles, but Noah didn't waver. "I'm not here to argue," he said. "I just need you to check the original footage." Judge Morton rubbed his temples, clearly irritated. "And what exactly do you expect to find?" "The timestamp has been altered," Noah said. "If you compare the unedited footage from the bank's security system with the one submitted to this court, you'll see the difference." More whispers from the crowd. The judge glanced at the prosecutor. "Well?" The prosecutor scoffed. "Your Honor, this is a complete waste of time. The evidence has already been examined by experts." Before he could finish, the courtroom doors burst open. 2 officers stormed in, hands on their holsters. "Noah Carter?" one of them called out, scanning the room. Noah's stomach dropped. His mother, sitting in the front row, immediately stood. "What's going on?" One of the officers pointed straight at Noah. "Step away from the bench, now!" Gasps filled the room. Noah didn't move. His mind raced, trying to piece together what was happening. This wasn't part of the plan. Judge Morton scowled. "What is the meaning of this?" The taller officer stepped forward. "We received an alert about an unauthorized breach into the court's database. The trace led us to his laptop." The courtroom exploded into murmurs. Noah's mother's voice shook. Wait, you think my son hacked into the court system? Noah clenched his jaw. I didn't hack anything. The officer ignored him. We have reason to believe he accessed restricted case files illegally. Judge Morton's expression darkened. Is that true? Noah took a deep breath. He could lie, deny everything, try to talk his way out of it. Or he could tell the truth. He straightened his shoulders. Yes, I accessed the files. The room gasped again. His mother covered her mouth, her eyes wide with panic. Judge Morton's face turned red. You admit to hacking a government system? Do you have any idea what kind of trouble you're in? Noah didn't flinch. I don't care about trouble, he said. I care about the fact that the wrong person is about to go to prison. The officers moved in. Noah Carter, you're under arrest. The cold steel of handcuffs snapped around his wrists before he could react. His mother shot up from her seat. No, this is a mistake. He was just trying to help. Judge Morton slammed his gavel. Order! Order! The room was spiraling into chaos. People whispering, the prosecutor grinning, the judge rubbing his forehead like he had a migraine. Noah took a step forward, ignoring the cuffs biting into his wrists. Your Honor, he said, voice loud and clear. Please, just check the footage. Judge Morton looked at him, eyes narrowing. If I'm wrong, Noah continued, I'll take full responsibility. I won't fight the charges. But if I'm right, his voice softened just a little, then you'll have convicted an innocent man. The judge stared at him for a long moment. Then, without a word, he turned to the bailiff. Get me the original footage. The courtroom held its breath, and Noah Carter, hands cuffed, heart pounding, prayed that he hadn't just made the biggest mistake of his life. The courtroom was frozen in silence. Every eye was on Judge Morton as he sat stiffly in his chair, his fingers drumming against the bench. His irritation was still there, but now something else flickered beneath it. Curiosity. He sighed heavily. Fine, he said, turning to the bailiff. Retrieve the original footage from the bank's security system. Let's put this nonsense to rest. The prosecutor's face darkened. Your Honor, this is a waste of time. I wasn't asking for your opinion, the judge snapped, cutting him off. The prosecutor clamped his mouth shut. Noah, still handcuffed, stood tall. He had played his last card. Now, he just had to wait. Minutes passed. The courtroom buzzed with hushed whispers. Reporters scribbled furiously in their notebooks, sensing that something big was about to unfold. Finally, a court official rushed back in, carrying a laptop. His face was pale, like he had seen a ghost. We received a live copy of the unedited footage from the bank's security system, the official announced, setting up the laptop on the judge's bench. It's ready to play. The tension in the room thickened. Judge Morton leaned forward. Play it. The screen flickered to life. The black and white security footage showed the interior of the bank, the tellers, the customers, the entrance doors, and then the moment of truth. At exactly 9:42 a.m., the doors swung open. A man walked in, but it wasn't Daniel Grayson. A collective gasp erupted through the courtroom. Lisa Carter, Noah's mother, covered her mouth in shock. The defense attorney's jaw dropped. Even the court stenographer, who had been typing away mechanically, paused mid-keystroke. Judge Morton's expression hardened. He rewound the footage, played it again. Same time stamp, same moment, different man. The courtroom exploded with chaos. The defense team stood up in outrage. Spectators murmured furiously. The reporters were already drafting headlines in their minds. The prosecutor's face drained of color. This doesn't make sense, he stammered, shifting in his seat. The evidence was solid. It was tampered with, Noah said, his voice firm. The timestamp was altered. Someone wanted to make sure Daniel Grayson took the fall. Judge Morton sat back in his chair, staring at the screen. For the first time in his entire career, he looked unsure of himself. Then, slowly, His gaze lifted to Noah. The arrogance, the condescension from earlier, it was gone. Instead, there was something else. Respect. He exhaled, rubbing a hand over his face. Well, I'll be damned. Noah didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Because in that moment, the judge and everyone else in that room finally understood what they had been too blind to see. The quiet kid wasn't just some troublemaker. He was the smartest person in the room. The courtroom was still buzzing with shock. The undeniable truth flickered on the screen, proof that the prosecution had relied on manipulated evidence. And yet, the most stunned person in the room wasn't the judge. It was the prosecutor. His face was drained of color, his hands gripping the table so tightly his knuckles turned white. He cleared his throat, trying to regain control. This must be some kind of mistake, he stammered. Your Honor, this footage could have been tampered with after the fact. We can't trust— Enough, Judge Morton cut in, his voice sharp. We all saw it. The evidence submitted to this court was falsified. He turned toward the defense table. Mr. Grayson should never have been charged in the first place. The defense attorney, who had spent weeks fighting a losing battle, was now suddenly on the winning side. He straightened, his voice carrying newfound strength. Your Honor, I move for an immediate dismissal of all charges against my client. The judge nodded. Motion granted. Another wave of gasps. Daniel Grayson's shoulders sagged with relief, his eyes wide with disbelief. Just moments ago, he had been a man preparing for a prison sentence. Now, he was free, and it was all because of one kid. Judge Morton turned his gaze to Noah, studying him for a long moment. His earlier arrogance had vanished, replaced with something more difficult to read. Noah Carter, he said slowly, tapping his gavel against the bench. You hacked into a government database, accessed confidential files, and embarrassed half the legal system in front of a full courtroom. Noah met his gaze evenly. Judge Morton smirked. I should have you thrown in jail. A nervous chuckle rippled through the room. Noah didn't react, waiting for the judge to continue. But, the judge went on, leaning back in his chair, you also just exposed a major cover-up, saved an innocent man's life, and proved that you're probably smarter than everyone in this room. The courtroom fell silent. Judge Morton tapped a finger against his desk. Which leaves me with a dilemma, he mused. Do I punish you for breaking the law, or do I offer you a job? Another round of murmurs. Noah raised an eyebrow. Is that a serious question? Judge Morton chuckled. Let's just say, I admire your ability to get to the truth. He sighed, rubbing his temples. Though next time, try not to commit a felony in the process. Before Noah could respond, the doors at the back of the courtroom swung open. A man in a black suit walked in. He was tall, sharp-eyed, and moved with the kind of confidence that made people nervous. He didn't hesitate, didn't stop, just strode straight to the judge's bench and leaned in. He whispered something. And just like that, the judge's expression changed. His jaw tightened. His hands gripped the desk. Then he turned back to Noah, his eyes sharper than before. Young man, he said carefully, I need you to come with us. Noah frowned. Why? The man in the suit stepped forward, his voice smooth and unreadable. Because it turns out, he said, you weren't the only one looking at that case. Noah's stomach dropped. Something was wrong, something big. And before he could even process it, two more men in suits stepped inside. This time, they weren't just here for a misunderstanding, they were here for him. Noah barely had time to react before the man in the suit stepped closer, his voice calm but firm. No sudden moves, he said. You need to come with us, now. The courtroom, which had been filled with murmurs just moments ago, fell deathly silent. Even Judge Morton looked uncertain. Noah's mother shot up from her seat. What's going on? Who are you? The agent flashed a badge. Agent Carter, Federal Bureau of Investigation. The letters on the badge blurred as Noah's brain worked overtime. The FBI judge Morton narrowed his eyes. "What's this about?" Carter's expression remained unreadable. "It's classified." Noah clenched his fists. "I didn't do anything wrong." Carter's gaze hardened. "No, kid. You did something very right, and that's the problem." Noah's breath hitched. "This case," Carter continued, lowering his voice, "the one you exposed? It wasn't just a mistake." He glanced at Judge Morton. "Someone wanted Daniel Grayson in prison, and you just got in their way." A chill crawled down Noah's spine. "Who?" Carter didn't answer. Instead, he turned toward the judge. "This courthouse isn't safe." Judge Morton's eyes darkened. "Are you telling me there's a threat?" Carter nodded once. Noah barely had time to process those words before, bang, a gunshot rang out. Screams erupted. People ducked. Chairs scraped against the floor as panic spread like wildfire. Noah's mother let out a sharp gasp and instinctively reached for him, but Carter moved faster. "Down!" Carter bellowed, grabbing Noah and yanking him behind the judge's bench. Judge Morton ducked as well, his gavel clattering to the floor. Security officers scrambled, drawing their weapons. The sound of boots pounding against the floor echoed through the chaos. Another gunshot. The courtroom doors flew open, and a man in a dark hoodie stormed inside, his gun raised. His face was masked, his movements quick, practiced. Noah's breath caught in his throat. They weren't here for the judge. They weren't even here for Daniel Grayson. They were here for him. Carter pulled his gun. "Cover him!" He barked at the other agents. Two officers tackled the shooter before he could fire again. The gun skidded across the floor, but Noah knew there would be more. This wasn't over. Carter grabbed Noah's wrist and pulled him toward the back exit of the courtroom. "We're getting you out of here." Noah's mother tried to follow, but another agent blocked her. "Ma'am, stay down." "No! He's my son!" Her voice cracked with panic. Noah looked back at her, his chest tightening. "Mom, I'll be okay." She shook her head, terror in her eyes. "Noah!" Carter yanked him forward. "Move! Now!" Noah had no choice. He ran. Gunfire erupted behind them. His heart pounded as he was dragged through the courthouse, past stunned officials and terrified spectators. The walls blurred, his ears rang, his mind barely able to keep up. The gunmen weren't here to scare him. They were here to eliminate him. And now, he knew one thing for sure. This was way bigger than he thought. Noah's feet barely touched the ground as Agent Carter dragged him down the back hallway of the courthouse. Behind them, the chaos of the courtroom raged on. Shouts, running footsteps, the distant wail of sirens. Carter didn't slow down. "Keep moving," he ordered, his grip like iron around Noah's wrist. Two more agents flanked them, their eyes sharp, their hands hovering near their weapons. They weren't just escorting Noah. They were protecting him, which meant whoever wanted him dead wasn't finished yet. They burst through a back exit and into a secured parking lot. A black SUV was already waiting, engine running. The driver, a stone-faced agent in a dark suit, nodded as Carter shoved Noah into the back seat. The second the door slammed shut, the tires screeched against the pavement. They were gone. Noah pressed his hands against the seat, trying to steady his breathing. "Where are we going?" Carter kept his eyes on the road. "Somewhere safe." That wasn't an answer. Noah turned toward him. "Who was that guy in the courthouse? Who sent him?" Carter's jaw tightened. "That's what we're trying to find out." Noah clenched his fists. He wasn't stupid. He knew the type of person who could manipulate a court case, falsify evidence, and send assassins after a teenager wasn't just some low-level criminal. This was bigger. The SUV sped down an empty highway, leaving the city lights behind. Soon they were deep in the countryside, surrounded by nothing but dark trees and open fields. Noah frowned. "Seriously, where are we going?" Carter finally glanced at him. "A safe house. No electronics. No internet. No tracking." Noah's stomach turned. "You're putting me in hiding?" "Yes." Noah let out a bitter laugh. Great. So I'm not just the kid who exposed a cover-up. I'm now a ghost? Carter didn't answer. 20 minutes later, they pulled up to a small, isolated cabin. It looked abandoned, the kind of place where people disappeared without a trace. The agent in the driver's seat killed the engine, and Carter turned to Noah. Inside. Now. Noah hesitated for half a second, just long enough to realize he had no other choice. The cabin smelled of old wood and dust. A single room, a table, a rusty stove, maps and documents scattered across a desk. Carter locked the door behind them. Noah crossed his arms. So, what now? I sit here and wait while you figure out who's trying to kill me. Carter sighed, rubbing his temples. No, kid, you're going to figure it out. Noah blinked. What? Carter grabbed a duffel bag from the floor and tossed it onto the table. Everything you need is in there, laptop, chargers, burner phone. You're the one who cracked this case in the first place, so now you're gonna finish it. Noah stared at him. Then, slowly, he walked to the bag and unzipped it. The glow of his laptop screen lit up the room as he powered it on. The second he logged in, he went straight to work, digging through encrypted court records, tracing financial transactions, and then he found it. A name. Noah's breath hitched as he stared at the screen. Holy... No way. Carter stepped closer. What? Noah swallowed hard. This isn't just some random corruption case. He turned the laptop so Carter could see. The name at the center of it all wasn't a detective. It wasn't a prosecutor. It wasn't even a judge. It was a senator. Carter exhaled sharply. Damn! Noah's hands tightened into fists. That's why they framed Daniel Grayson. He must have uncovered something big. Carter ran a hand over his face. We're dealing with a full-blown political cover-up. Noah closed his laptop. His pulse pounded in his ears. Now we know who's behind this, he said, his voice steady. And if I'm right... He met Carter's gaze. They're not just trying to kill me. Carter nodded grimly. They're trying to bury the truth. The black SUV came to a smooth stop outside the grand ballroom of the Lexington Hotel. The city's elite were gathered inside, politicians, businessmen, and media moguls, all dressed in expensive suits and designer gowns. But none of them had any idea that in just a few minutes, their world was about to be turned upside down. Noah Carter adjusted the cuff of his stolen tuxedo and took a deep breath. This is insane, he muttered. Beside him, Agent Carter smirked as he handed Noah a sleek earpiece. Welcome to the big leagues, kid. Try not to get yourself killed. Noah rolled his eyes, but took the earpiece anyway. He wasn't a spy. He wasn't a hacker for hire. But tonight, he was going to expose a U.S. senator in front of the entire world. As he stepped out of the SUV and into the golden-lit entrance of the hotel, he straightened his shoulders, slipping into the role he needed to play. Just another rich kid attending a charity gala. He moved through the crowd easily, weaving between guests who had no idea a teenager was about to ruin their evening. Then he saw him, Senator William Stratton. The man stood near the stage, laughing with his fellow politicians, completely unaware that the very kid he had tried to have killed was standing just feet away. Noah's pulse quickened. He reached into his pocket, fingers closing around his phone. With one tap, he uploaded the files, thousands of documents, financial records, and video evidence, all set to go live. The screens inside the ballroom flickered, and then the party came to a screeching halt. Large projectors, once displaying the senator's campaign highlights, now showed something else entirely. Bank transactions, secret payments, a direct financial link between Senator Stratton and the falsified court case that nearly sent an innocent man to prison. The room went silent. Noah could hear gasps, the sound of champagne glasses shattering against the marble floor as guests realized what they were seeing. Panic spread across the senator's face as he turned to his security. "Shut it down," too late. The press had already pulled out their phones, cameras flashed, reporters shouted, and the whole world was watching. Noah stepped forward, locking eyes with the senator. "Hey, Senator," he said, his voice carrying through the stunned room. "You tried to bury the truth." He gestured to the giant screen. "Guess that didn't work out too well, huh?" Stratton's face twisted in fury. "You little—" Before he could finish, the doors burst open. FBI agents swarmed in. "Senator William Stratton," one of them announced, "you are under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and obstruction of justice." The senator's hands curled into fists, his face pale with rage. But he didn't resist as they snapped the handcuffs around his wrists. As they dragged him away, Stratton's eyes found Noah's one last time. "This isn't over," he hissed. Noah smiled. "Yeah, it is." And just like that, it was over. The world knew the truth. The system had been exposed. And the quiet kid no one had taken seriously had just taken down one of the most powerful men in the country. Noah exhaled, shoving his hands in his pockets as he turned toward the exit. Agent Carter leaned against the doorframe, watching him with an amused smirk. "Not bad for a kid," he said. Noah chuckled. "Not bad for anyone." As he stepped outside, the cool night air hit his face, and for the first time in his life, he felt free, not just from fear, not just from hiding, but from the version of himself that had always played it safe. Tonight, he wasn't just Noah Carter, the quiet kid in the back of the class. He was the kid who took down a senator, and that was only the beginning. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more thrilling content like this. What would you have done in Noah's situation? Let us know in the comments below. And remember, sometimes the quietest person in the room has the loudest impact. Stay curious, stay fearless, and we'll see you in the next one.